Everyone says that they want to scale their outbound and book more sales calls, but almost no one wants to do what it takes, at least not when they're doing it the old way. I've spent the last 3 years in the trenches, sending over 5 million cold emails and booking over 3,000 sales meetings, and as a result, generating millions of dollars in pipeline and revenue for my clients. And here's what I learned. The people that are winning right now aren't the ones that are spending 14-hour grind sessions manually prospecting on LinkedIn. They're the ones who figured out how to make AI do the heavy lifting for them. Now, I know what you're thinking. Matt, everyone has access to ChatGPT. Why isn't everyone crushing it? And that's exactly the point. Having the tool is not enough. It's like handing someone a high-performance engine and expecting them to build a race car around it. The system you build it with is actually what generates the result. Today, I'm going to show you exactly how that works. This is the laziest and most proven way I know how to consistently book sales calls using AI. So let's dive in. All right, so first off, I just want to jump in and talk about what big picture the landscape looked like before AI came in, because before AI was mainstream, everything was completely different. When I was starting out, I had to manually build lists and spend hours and hours and hours on Apollo and LinkedIn, picking through each individual keyword, job title, company type, persona, industry, and writing every single email from scratch. I used to, for my first client, legitimately, I would pull up a spreadsheet of 200 people and I would click on every single one of their LinkedIn profiles, do a little bit of research, type it in so I could use it as a customized first line, then go to the next and do it all over again. On top of that, I had to manually track all the different analytics in spreadsheets one by one, tracking the replies, tracking the positive replies, tracking the response rates. And I would just spend hours and hours every single day doing administrative tasks that did not contribute to the success of outreach. And a lot of you guys watching this video are probably doing it and not realizing that you don't need to do this anymore. I was working 14-hour days, setting up email accounts, manually validating every single lead to make sure that they were fit, writing 50 different variations of the copy, manually personalizing the emails, constantly monitoring deliverability. Now, shortly after all this was happening, ChatGPT came out in late 2022 and absolutely broke the internet. And I don't know about you, but whenever I saw all these different AI features and how AI could be generally intelligent, I knew the exact direction that all the sales automation was shortly about to head into. And I knew that I had to hop on this as quickly as I possibly could. And what I soon figured out is that ChatGPT was not just useful for helping you ideate cold email scripts and coming up with things outside of manually doing your cold outreach, but you could also leverage it inside of tools to personalize your emails better, to make sure your emails were delivering better. And this allowed a whole new wave of AI sales tools to catch on and plug ChatGPT directly into their platforms. And then now you can use tools like Agent to go out and actually scrape the web, find information about each and every single lead, score if they're a fit, and on top of that, generate a huge research report that would manually have taken probably 30 minutes to an hour for every single lead, and do that at scale. So now you can personalize each and every email as if it was manually written by an SDR. So as an example, it took all these different processes that used to take minutes or even hours at a time manually researching lead by lead by lead, and replace it with something that could be done in less than 10 seconds and cost a fraction of a penny. This is not only true of researching leads to see if they're a fit or not. This includes writing customized first lines, which again, you can press a couple clicks of a button and have it do 1,000 in just a couple minutes. This also includes manually segmenting lists. Instead of having to make list A that is chiropractors and list B that is general practice doctors and list C that is dentists, you could just input a list of all kinds of different medical practices and have AI categorize each individual lead by a couple keywords that identifies what the list is or what the lead is. And on top of this, now you could ideate all kinds of different split tests that would take hours at a time for you to come up with all kinds of different variations, and do this in just a handful of minutes. Now, honestly, I think most entrepreneurs and sales teams have not caught up to this trend because, number one, they don't even realize that any of what I'm talking about is possible because they don't have the right training in place or don't have the right guidance. Number two, they don't understand how to prompt AI effectively. So even if they've tried to do something like this, they got really poor results and they wrote it off and said, AI can't automate this. We have to manually do this still. Or they're scared because they think whenever you automate things, it's just spam and people aren't going to like your emails. Or they think personalization means that you have to write every single email whenever AI now can take this whole process and make it 10 times easier. Now, if you're still doing what I was doing years ago, not only is this going to cost you 30 hours a week or so in manual tasks between you, your sales guys, and anyone else that's involved in this process. Number two is you're going to reach a fraction of the amount of people that you should be, because if you're manually writing all these emails, you might only be able to reach 50 people a day and send 50 emails a day when you should be sending 5,000 emails a day. On top of this is going to result in you missing out on 90% of potential pipeline of leads that are interested and want to hear about your service, but you're not able to reach them effectively. Or what I see really common too is that people just throw away outbound as the channel entirely before they can even get it to work. So if everyone has access to these tools now, why do most people stay sending 50 emails a day and booking 0 to 2 meetings per month? It's not because the AI books meetings, it's because you need to leverage the AI properly so that you can do this. And this brings me to the new way of doing things, because what I used to do, I had to unlearn entirely. I had to stop manually researching every single lead and instead researching a couple leads, prompting the AI properly, and making sure that it is done well at scale. I had to stop writing perfect cold emails that you might think are perfect to 1 or 2 people when in reality they're just going to ignore them because you're not reaching enough people at all, and started using AI to handle all the personalization at scale. I still was able to take all the different skills of doing this on a one-to-one basis, but instead of doing this for 100 or 1,000 people at a time, I only have to do it for 2 to 5 people, make sure that the prompt that I'm using to generate those results is replicated, and then being able to run this at scale. The difference now isn't who works harder, it's the person who thinks in systems, who's able to prompt the AI effectively and to be able to run it at scale so you can reach thousands of people at a time. Now, after realizing with a couple good prompts, I could replicate almost identically everything I was doing manually, and allowed me to personalize orders of magnitude more amounts of leads, then I realized that the difference between having successful and unsuccessful campaigns had more to do with reaching a high volume of people and making sure that the people in the first place were relevant, rather than hyper customizing every single thing, which, by the way, you can still do with AI. And so as an example, I used to go from scraping hundreds of leads and having to go one by one and clicking on their LinkedIn profile, trying to find something relevant, throwing in the email and hoping that it did kind of okay, to now having AI check their LinkedIn, check their website, check all of the details about their company, check everyone that works there, and find the one unique relevant piece to inject in the email. On top of this, we're able to ideate all kinds of different value propositions, generate custom reports on all the different personas that we're targeting so we use the right value propositions, and then narrow those variants back down into the variants that we think are going to perform best. And on top of this, we're able to segment lists in ways that weren't even possible by having AI, again, scrape each website, identify what type of lead they are, and then throwing them in the proper list that they should be in. Now, how I define leverage today is, instead of you, the business owner, the sales leader, or the person doing the outreach, where you would manually have to do all these tasks that might cost someone $20 an hour, $10 an hour, $30 an hour, depending on where you're hiring from, to do all these manual different tasks, is you can have AI do all of that while you focus on the decisions that close deals, that drive more pipeline, that ultimately grows the business, which some people might call lazy. But if that means that's lazy, then I'd much rather have AI handle all the research, do all the writing, do all the segmentation, and have me focus on closing the deals and making sure that the business grows and that sales are coming into the business. Your job as a sales leader, as a business owner, or even as someone who's doing the frontline sales, is to focus on the strategy, is to focus on the offer, is to focus on closing deals and growing the business, not on manually going line by line by line and calling out what college this lead went from, or if they're a good fit or a bad fit. Now, I want to be crystal clear here. There's a way where you can be lazy and it'll absolutely destroy your business, your sales process, and your outbound process as a whole. And there's a way that you can be lazy where it amplifies everything you're doing by applying leverage to it. The bad kind of lazy is where you have no strategy, where you're spraying and praying, where you're prompting AI one time and you're letting it run, or you're doing these super generic and corny personalizations that look worse than not even using AI at all. Now, the good kind of lazy is taking all of the manual processes that you or your sales team were planning on doing and just having AI do it instead, so you're not spending 10 hours a week doing something that could be done with a couple clicks of a button and a few dollars in the AI spend. The best way to amplify your laziness is to use automation, use smart targeting, use constant iteration, and to take all those manual actions that you were going to do already and just make sure that AI does it instead for a fraction of the cost. Now, it really started to click with me that leveraging AI is way more valuable than doing everything myself whenever I had a customer and they had a lead list and it was about 70% accurate, and we're talking about thousands and thousands of leads here. And so I was faced with two options. Option A, I could spend hours combing through every individual lead in terms of thousands of leads at a time, marking them good fit, bad fit, good fit, bad fit, and doing that over again. Or the other option of just letting the campaign run and then 30% of the data that I'm sending to is completely wrong. But whenever I figured out that I could research people at scale, I could run prompts, and I could filter all these leads out with a couple clicks of a button, I started to let AI do most of the work. And after I was able to make AI do most of the work, I was able to send thousands of emails a day, not having to comb through every single lead one by one and not having to lift a finger. All right, so now it's time to talk about the cold outreach machine itself, so that you can go ahead, send thousands of emails a day and book calls without having to do a whole ton yourself. So the first tool that I'm going to talk about here is Apollo. All right, so jumping into Apollo, which is one of the first tools I use whenever I build any sort of outreach campaign, because I use Apollo to build the full starting point data list that I will then filter down. So the point of Apollo here is to act as a database, capture all the leads that we think we can reach out to, and then we will go ahead and filter these down. So as an example, if I want to reach out to marketing agencies, all I have to do is pop into Apollo, go over to this people tab here, go under industries and keywords, and I can type marketing and advertising as an industry. So it'll pull all kinds of different businesses that are tagged as marketing and advertising. Now I can add additional keywords in like agency. Now, because we're going to be leveraging all these AI tools, if I'm being totally honest, it doesn't matter a whole ton. We don't want to narrow this too far in, because if we spend hours and hours and hours here, first of all, it's never going to be perfect. And second of all, if we end up filtering this down too far, then it's going to narrow down some leads that we should have got in that we didn't because we added too many keywords. So I'm just going to start here, and I can throw in a keyword like agency, and awesome. This brings us down to 1.3 million people that are part of a company that is tagged with marketing and advertising and agency. Now, on top of this, we would want to filter for all kinds of different job titles like CEO, owner, founder, president, if we're trying to reach out to decision makers, or, if you're trying to reach out to different industries, you would want to play around with this more. Really cool thing about Apollo, there are so many filters. You can filter down for specific people and their names. You can filter for time zones people are in. You can filter for job titles that people have. You can filter for company types. You can filter for location, employee size, and all these different filters. And as an example, I'm going to narrow this down to a super small list so that we can play around with this more. I'm going to go ahead and I'm actually going to remove the agency keyword so I can get as many types of companies in here as possible. I'm going to throw in a couple different email status filters to make sure that these leads have emails, which will make our lives a little bit easier here in a second. In addition to this, I'm just going to throw in a basic job title like CEO. Now, again, I'd want to add a bunch more job titles here. And one of the ways that I like to commonly leverage AI is to go over here into ChatGPT. And inside ChatGPT, I can say, I am reaching out to marketing agencies. I want to have an exhaustive list of all kinds of titles that could be decision makers. I am selling a B2B software solution. What are all the potential job titles? Output this as a comma separated list. Now, the reason why I'm doing this in this format is, number one, I'm asking for all possible titles so it can be as exhaustive as possible. And the reason why I want it in a comma separated list is because inside of Apollo, I can copy and paste this directly, and this will spit out all these different titles in a couple clicks of a button. So if I press enter here, you can see that it just split out all these different job titles one by one by one. Now, we exceeded 100 job titles because we did so many of them. So I don't know how many of these we're going to need to remove. Maybe I will just go back here and pull out the first few dozen of them. But as an example, this is what you can do using AI to be able to get a more exhaustive filter list instead of just typing in a couple job titles and then missing out on half your addressable market because you're too lazy to enter in all the different job titles that people have. Now, again, I'm going to filter this down a little bit further. I'm going to filter out companies that have 21 to 50 employees. I'm doing this somewhat arbitrarily, but in most cases, you're going to want to filter down the employee headcounts to be company sizes that you want to reach out to. And now, awesome, we have 27,000 different companies, as you can see up here, that are all some sort of marketing company. Now, as an example, I'm just going to pull, a couple thousand of these. I'm going to pull 2,000 of them, and then I'm going to press apply, and then I'm going to ship them over to our next tool that we're going to use here, which is Clay. So I'm going to go over here and export these leads. And while this is running, I'm going to pull up clay.com. Now, Clay is my tool of choice where I can filter things down using AI. You technically can do this in Apollo. I think Apollo has the capability to do this, but I also like using Clay because there's a lot of other different tools I can bolt on top of this. So while Clay is loading and while Apollo is loading, I'm going to download these leads here. Now I have 2,000 leads as a starting point, and I can go ahead and use Clay's native prompting tool here, and I can build a list or have it enrich the list inside of here. I'm actually going to start here with a new workbook, and I'm going to upload this list that I just generated from Apollo. Now, while this is uploading, uploading. I'm going to talk about here about this feature that Clay just launched, which is called Sculptor. This is an AI feature. And what this will allow me to do is I can prompt Clay natively and have it do a lot of the work of picking out which tools and whatnot I need to use so that I can run this workflow more effectively. So if I press this chat with Sculptor here in the top right, this is Clay's AI assistant. And so I can have it start to build out different enrichments inside of Clay just by talking to Clay directly here. So I have this big list of 2,000 people, their names, emails, and whatnot, but I want to make sure that this list is only marketing agencies. So I'm going to prompt Clay. Shout out to this tool here. It's called Whisper Flow. So I can talk using this AI tool and have it type for me. So I'm going to go ahead and use this here. I want you to add a Clayagent column inside of this table to help me score these leads and filter out all the leads that are not marketing agencies. So to be clear, I want you to visit each and every one of these websites and check to see if these companies are marketing agencies, and if they are, output true, and if they're not, output false. And I want you to do this leveraging Clayagent. I just spoke that prompt into existence, and so that's going to paste it inside of Clay here because I'm using another AI tool to do this. It looks like it's spelled Clayagent wrong here, but it looks like AI is smart enough to fix my problems. And you can see here, Clay is going out and starting to build this table out to do everything I said. Now, again, you can do this manually. If I want to, I could close out this tab and just press the buttons in and do this myself. But again, I just want to show you all the different ways you can leverage AI. And so now it's putting together the column here. Cool. And you can see now that it's finished running, it gives us the option to just set up the column. And so I just press that button and I'm going to move my beautiful face here. So you can see it went ahead and it already generated the prompt. So you're an AI powered web scraper. I want you to visit this website and determine if they're a marketing agency. Visit this website, open it, do all of these tasks. You see all this crazy stuff that I didn't even have to come up with, and then only output true or false. Now, again, I probably don't want to check this over and clean this up. So if I go over here and I press run 10 rows, actually, I'm going to change it around. So I'm not using Clay credits. I'm going to go over to GPT 5 and I'm going to use my own API key, or actually I'm going to use GPT-5 mini, which is a little bit cheaper, and I'm able to use my own API key here. And so I'm going to run this 10 times. I'm just going to let it run and see how well it did to start. Maybe we're going to have to change this prompt around. But like I said, when you nail this and you can do this on a scale of 10 people and you like it, you can just run it for all 2,000. So you don't have to manually go lead by lead by lead and change everything around. All right. And so now you can see some of the responses are coming back here. I just realized that I actually was out of API credits whenever I was working with this table here, which is why it was taking so long. So I switched it over to Anthropic, which is Claude, and I use their 4.5 haiku model here. And as you can see, now AI has visited each and every one of these websites and determined if they're marketing agencies or not, and just output it in a simple format. Now, if I go and I click into this, I can take a deeper view of the information that it generated. And as you can see, not only did it give the output saying that this lead is a marketing agency, it can show you the full list of reasoning. So it says this website identifies itself explicitly as a full service and coaching agency on this website. The company provides turnkey marketing solutions, exact appointment setting services, blah, 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 blah. Point being is not only did it output us and tell us that it is a marketing agency, we can click in and see exactly why it gave that reason. And on top of this, look at the cost here. You can see it costs $0.008 to do this, or in layman's terms, less than a penny. And you can just press with a click of a button. I could just press this play button and run this run column, force run all 2,000 rows, and then we could do this 2,000 times. Now imagine before you would have had to pay a virtual assistant, have someone go one by one and do this all at once, or you would have sat there in Apollo's editor for hours and hours and hours trying to tweak everything perfectly, still to be left with a giant list of people that aren't perfectly accurate. Now, once you're done with this, you can send it on over to a tool like SmartLead. And so now that we're inside SmartLead, you can come in here and upload all the leads. Now, what SmartLead lets you do is a lot of things. First of all, it lets you create email accounts at scale. So clicking over here on the left-hand side on this email accounts tab, you can see I have 6,000 email accounts that I'm managing. Now, I'm doing this because we're setting up email accounts outside of SmartLead, but you can also purchase accounts natively inside of SmartLead so that you can spread out your email sending volume. Now, some of you people out there might be watching and saying, Matt, you're a psychopath. Why do you have 6,000 email accounts? And the reason why is you are able to send way more emails more reliably and not land in the spam folder if you set up more email accounts accounts and spread out the volume between them instead of sending them all from one singular email account. Now, SmartLead, you can natively purchase email accounts in here and have them preloaded. And on top of this, you can use their AI warming feature to make sure that the email reputation stays up in time and make sure that you're rotating out all these email accounts when you're sending emails. Now, after everything's all said and done and you have your email account set up, you have your lead list set up, you have your copy written the way that you want, you can pop over here in the email campaign tab and you can press create a campaign. And this is where you can upload all the different assets that we just built inside of Clay with, again, just a couple clicks of a button, which will allow us to engage thousands of people at scale instead of just reaching out to people one by one. And as an example, I want to show you, these are real client campaigns we're running. I'm going to blur out the client name and information so we keep it anonymous, but you can see these are client campaigns. They're actively being run that are generating dozens and dozens and hundreds of leads every single month for them that their sales team can work, that grows in their pipeline, that increases brand awareness, and ultimately translates into revenue far beyond what they are spending to get this done. And just to prove the point, here are some campaigns that we are actively running for ourselves. You can see we are able to send thousands and tens of thousands of emails at scale and get thousands of responses and get hundreds of people that are interested that ultimately say that they want to learn more, that we can engage and get into calls on our calendar. Now, on top of this, we can leverage tools like HeyReach to automatically engage every single lead that says that they're interested. So we have a automation set up between SmartLead and HeyReach. So every single time someone raises their hand and says that they're interested, we send them a LinkedIn connection request. And so we have a workflow like this set up. So whenever someone gets added into a campaign, which gets triggered whenever someone says that they're interested in SmartLead, we check to see if we're connected with them already. If we are connected with them, we send them a super simple message saying, hey, just touching base from our email chain. If we're not connected with them, then we send them a connection request. And in that connection request, we say that we're touching base from the email that we sent them. And then we send a follow-up message saying that we're glad to connect after they connect. And if they don't connect, then we go ahead and we like their post to get in front of them again. And again, this is how we are able to not only targeted reach out to people and scrape leads at a magnitude of thousands or tens of thousands of people that are relevant and targeted and are good fit leads. Not only that, we're able to sequence them at thousands of emails a day by using tools like SmartLead to get this done. And on top of that, we can use tools like HeyReach to engage the leads on multiple platforms after they've expressed interest. And again, whenever these tools are leveraged properly, they help drive the metric that ultimately matters, not all the fancy numbers of how many emails you sent, how many replies you got, and this and that, but ultimately helping drive meetings on the calendar, which we have here, and we've tracked over 3,000 sales meetings that we've booked as a result of all of our outreach efforts over the years. But also it translates to pipeline, which is they're actually interested in engaging with your business and closed revenue. And by the way, if you want to apply to work with me and my team, you can click the first link in the description below to see if we can help set up a system like what I'm showing you in this video here. So ultimately, you can start to book more meetings on your calendar, generate more pipeline, and ultimately close more deals consistently through outreach. And so to tie everything all together, although I am not a mathematician, I can use some basic math after what we've seen and all the data that we've collected from working with dozens of customers, sending millions of emails and booking thousands of sales calls. I have a pretty good idea of what average results could look like if you're sending emails at scale. And then you can use this to kind of project out your numbers. So let's say that you're sending 1,000 emails per day, which I would say is a reasonable starting point, and you are sending on 20 days per month. This means that you are sending about 20,000 emails per month. Now, depending on the month, again, this is a very conservative figure because this is assuming you're not sending on weekends, and this is assuming that you are sending on a month that has a lot of weekends. So I will also talk about what it looks like if you send 5,000 emails per day, because again, if you crank these numbers up, the results are pretty linear. So this is 100,000 emails per month. So again, let's run some pretty basic projections here. Again, after working with tons of clients, this is what we typically see, about a 1 to 2% reply rate. So I'm just going to do 1 to 2% here, which is 200 to 400 replies per month, or in this case, this is 1,000 to 2,000 replies per month. Then of this, we typically see about 5 to 15% of these people becoming leads. The vast majority of people you reach out to are not going to be interested. I'm just going to use 10% as a round figure here. So this is 20 to 40 interested leads per month, or in this case, 100 to 200 interested leads per month. And then from here, booking meetings, again, depending on your process, this could be as low as 20%, which I would say is a pretty conservative figure, or 50% or higher. Again, I'd rather undershoot. So 20% of 20. So again, low end number. So low end here, this is 4 meetings per month. High end, this is 20 meetings. And then here, 20% of 100. I don't need to be a mathematician to get that. 50% of 200. This is 100 meetings per month. Again, projecting out on 1,000 a day and 5,000 a day. And from here, let's assume you have an 80% show rate. This cuts these numbers down slightly. And then let's say you close about 20% of the shown meetings. Again, I'm not a mathematician. Let's calculate out some numbers here. I'm actually just going to blend these together to make it a little bit simple. Let's just say we're doing 10 meetings per month here. And in this case, let's just say we're doing 50 meetings per month. 80% of them show. That's about 8 shown calls. In this case, is about 40 shown calls. And then let's say you close 20% of these. So we'll just say 1 deal. Again, I'm going to round down. So this is 1 deal per month. And in this case, that would be 8 deals per month. Now, again, I'm not a mathematician, but if you're selling B2B and your ticket size is anywhere between $5,000, $10,000 or even higher, which in most cases, if you're going to want outreach to be the most successful, I would say you want your lifetime value to be $10,000 or greater. It does not take a rocket science to project out how this endeavor can be very profitable if you do this correctly. Now, again, main things I want to talk about here. Your mileage may vary. Every industry is different. This is not a guarantee, and I want to be totally transparent. These are not the results that every single one of our customers gets, and this is not the results that I'm saying that you're going to get. These are just the results that I've seen that are a rough indication of average after working with dozens and dozens of clients, and that you can use if you roughly want to project out your numbers. And again, if you want to say, hey, I don't trust Matt, I'm going to cut all these numbers in half, you can project out your numbers in that way. But point is here, I'm not guaranteeing anything. I'm not a rocket scientist. I'm not a mathematician. All that I'm really getting at here, it doesn't take a genius to see how if you execute the system in an efficient way, that this can be very profitable and bring new potential leads and new potential deals into your business in a consistent manner. Now that, my friends, is the laziest way that I know on how you can book dozens of new sales meetings per month and get hundreds potentially of new opportunities every single month leveraging AI. Now, if this seems interesting and you want to apply to work with us so that we can build out something like this for you and your team, you can apply to work with us using the first link in the description below. Otherwise, if you want to learn more about how you can do cold outreach at scale, leverage AI, scrape new leads, there's a plethora of videos on this channel, and I would encourage you to check them out. I really appreciate you watching this, and take care.